What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly, fresh off the 2022 NFL Draft. Joined by Matt Money Smith, as always, and this will be our last appearance with Dane Brugler. And, buddy, we should give Dane a round of applause for that incredible performance over the last 4 months with the Beast and getting everybody informed. I was referring to that thing all weekend long, man. I know it was a lot of work, but congratulations.
No, hey, it was every year, so much work goes into it, and you're like, why am I doing this? Is it even worth it? Like, what are we doing here? When it's 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of January, and you're trying to find how many siblings this 7th round corner has. But you know what? It was all worth it to put it all together. And then it's a lot of fun to see these guys get drafted, all the reactions, and then got a lot of positive feedback from fans that we're using the guide as a reference, and so that's really cool to hear.
Did you get 100%?
99.9, so pretty close.
Who'd you miss?
Your Illinois punter. I mean, what happened? What happened?
Was it a Patriot pick? It's always the Patriots that screw you, right?
Well, look, I all 262 players that were drafted were in the draft guide. So that
you did? Okay, that's what I was talking about. Did you get everyone that was drafted? So you got 100%.
Now there were a few players that I didn't have a write-up for, but they were ranked and all their testing data was in the guide. So that was,
there you go. That works.
That's the goal every year, is to get everybody that's drafted in the guide. So that happened.
Congratulations. Not easy.
No, it's not.
Not easy.
Yeah. It's all it takes is one team to really love a player that, and I thought there's a German prospect that the last 2 weeks before the draft, all of a sudden started to get this buzz. And you're like, oh no, because he's not in there. But he might have a chance to get drafted. But no, thankfully, for me, selfishly, everybody was in there.
Well, it's the author of the. What's that? Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen his Blake. Has he signed yet with the team?
I saw the Illinois kicker got drafted.
He got signed by the Chargers as an undrafted free agent, which is interesting because I called the NFLPA game. And Jeff Fisher set him up to fail. He basically just took 3 knees at the end of the game. They were down 2, and he forced the Illinois kicker to kick from 46, and it was just a terrible shank. And I was like, oh, Fisher, you totally screwed this kid. You couldn't give him an extra 10 yards. So it was interesting to see the Chargers brought him into camp as a competition kicker. We know Hopkins.
Buddy, that's what it was. When I saw that, I got real excited thinking it was.
So did I.
Your guy.
And I was like, I don't think our man Blake has made a roster. Clearly, my eyes are not trained for what the world wants in punters, I guess. Alas, I'll go back to 2023.
Dane, let's just start at the top, man. The Chargers had a bunch of picks. I think we talked about Zion Johnson to close our last pod, and there he was at number 17 overall. The way the board shook out, it looked to be the right move for the Bolts.
Hey, no, credit to you, Chris, because I know you really wanted to talk about Zion and his fit, and that's ended up the direction I went in my final mock draft is Zion to the Chargers because it was such a perfect fit. And turns out there were a few players on the board like a Trevor Penning and a few other guys, but they went Zion Johnson. And I was asked 2 weeks ago before the draft who was my favorite player in the draft, and that kind of caught me off guard. Like a favorite player, like I can't just go with chalk and say Aiden Hutchinson or so I thought about it, and Zion Johnson, he's my favorite player in the draft because it's so easy to appreciate the way he plays the game. I mean, 6'3", 315 pounds. You see the play strength, you see the movement skills, and he's so smart the way he plays. The way he processes the action and puts himself in a position to execute is just so impressive. The position flex is great. He started double-digit games at 3 different positions in college, and that doesn't include center, which a lot of teams feel like center is going to be his best long-term position in the NFL. It's where he played at the Senior Bowl, so there's at least that flexibility there if you want to play him at center. But I think as a plug-and-play guard, Zion Johnson it just checks a lot of boxes for what you're looking for. And in the middle of the first round like that, where the Chargers were picking, a good chance you're missing out on some of the quote unquote elite guys or the top of the guys on your draft board. But Zion Johnson sitting right there, a guy that you can draft, plug into, and he's part of the culture that he's going to bring. I mean, that's a big part of it too. So, what not only brings to the locker room, to the field, But he's just a great guy to talk to as well. So I thought it was a home run pick.
Let's just stick with position then, Dane. So kind of share with us and the listeners how Jamari Salyer, who, is a left tackle for Georgia, who has tackle guard flexibility, did it in the middle of the national championship game. Why does he slide to the 6th round? Because when you look at the numbers, what was it? A single sack and like a couple pressures in his entire college career. So kind of walk us through why he was there in the 6th round.
And I heard from a few teams, because that's usually when Sunday comes of the draft, that's when I start, texting and reaching out to people and saying, okay, well, why did this guy fall? Why did this guy fall? A lot of responses are our coaches didn't like him, or not to Salyer, but just in general. A lot of guys, the interviews didn't go well, or it's the medicals, and the medicals are a big part. And that's what I heard on Salyer. There were a few teams that dinged the medicals. And then the other part of it is he wasn't a great tester. The jumps weren't great. The lower body explosion weren't great. And so I think that when you look at pure traits, maybe he doesn't stack up with some other prospects in this class. But this is a trust the tape guy. I mean, just watch him at Georgia at left tackle, and he just doesn't give up pressures. I mean, he does not. You don't see a lot of negative reps there. And it doesn't always look pretty. It doesn't always look like necessarily, perfect coaching tape, but he gets the job done consistently. This is a player I thought was worthy of a day 2 pick, based off of, just his ability, based off of what he did in college. But again, you're trusting the tape with a player like this, and to get him later on in day 3, I thought was a huge steal with Salyer. So character-wise, I think the Chargers are really gonna, like what he brings to the locker room. Versatility. He played mostly tackle, but I think his body type and the way he plays, you're gonna kick him inside to guard. I know some teams kind of viewed him as a tackle guard tweener, like they weren't sure if he was going to be a perfect fit at either of those spots, kind of in the middle. But I think he can make that transition to guard and be a really quality player. I think he adds immediate depth to this team.
It's incredible that he was there based on, just looking at your guide and seeing, okay, shoot, we're in the 6th round. Salyer's still available. I mean, could you potentially kick him out to right tackle, Dane?
I mean, he has that experience. He started a couple games at right tackle in his career. Ideally, you're not leaving him on an island. I think that he's a guy that takes those narrow steps, and he just doesn't have a ton of range, especially with the way he uses his hands. So I think that moving him to kind of a closed quarters type of position like guard is really going to help him. But now, let him compete for guard. I mean, this is what training camp is for. Go to training camp, let him compete, see what happens. But I think he's a smart guy. There are some bad habits he needs to clean up, but you really like the balance that he plays with, the core strength. Like I said, he just checks a lot of boxes. And when you watch the tape, that Georgia national championship team, the defense gets a lot of the attention, but without Salyer on that offensive line, who knows if they win a national title, or who knows if they make that type of run. He was that important to that team.
You've been doing this for a while, Dane. So I'm gonna ask you to dig a little bit here, because I don't think Storm is the guy. Storm North. I think that was just, obviously Bulaga gets hurt, but what do you remember about Trey Pipkins, about your evaluation of him? Because when he was drafted, it sounded like, look, he's raw, but he's got traits. We're just going to have to be patient with him. He played 2 games last year, and he looked pretty good in those 2 games. Yeah. Now, the other games he played in seasons before, not good. But last year, it looked like a different player. So what do you remember about your evaluation of Trey?
Coming from a small school, Sioux Falls, right?
Sioux Falls, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about lower level. We're talking about going up against play speed that he's never seen before. And that was the biggest thing, is just for him processing wise. I thought he had the movement skills to do it. It's just, okay, can he develop the core strength? Can he develop, between the ears in terms of understanding where the pressures are coming from, deciphering the blitz, hitting his landmarks on time. That was going to be so important with his hands as well. So tying that all together was, it's a projection when you're moving from that level of play to the NFL. And so I think, what he's been doing in practice, what he's been doing, the development part. We don't talk enough about the development part after these guys are drafted. The evaluation is critical. It's really important to understand what these guys can do and projecting them forward. But then the development part, that's when the coaches come in and get their hands on these guys to, really get the most out of them, the best out of them. And so, I mean, they drafted him in the top 4 rounds?
I think it was third round. If I remember right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, you don't draft a player like that in the 3rd round unless you believe he has starting upside. And so, it'll be interesting now going into the next training camp to see what type of player shows up. Is he a guy that's with the play strength, with the processing? Does he have enough time under his belt now with NFL coaching that he's ready to take that next step? So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, as Money said, he played in that Thursday night game against the Chiefs and played really well late in the year. And this was his first year with this new coaching staff. So I don't think it's time to kind of write off Trey Pipkins yet. I think that he may have
Chris, I think he might be the favorite. I really do. Like the fact that they didn't address it in the draft, that they really didn't, obviously that's why I brought up Salyer to see, and I'm glad you brought up the right tackle thing. I think he's going to end up being the incumbent. Or I shouldn't say the favorite though, even though, Storm is kind of the incumbent.
Yeah, no question. Hey, let's go to the 3rd round. JT Woods.
I love this guy, Dane.
Dude, he led the Big 12 in picks. This is a guy who is he's a ball hawk and he can cover a lot of ground.
I mean, maybe the best nickname in the draft.
Heartbreak Kid?
They called him the Heartbreak Kid. I mean, that's awesome. How cool is that? And that's something that was given to him by his teammates and his coaches at Baylor. So, a guy that just finds ways to get his hands on the football. And that's what you want in your DBs. Guys that are in the right place at the right time. And that's usually not a coincidence. Guys that can find the football and then make something happen. So the last 2 years, 9 interceptions. He also had that 97-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown this past year. And he can do something when he gets his hand on the ball. He can have a pick 6 and do something. So a guy that is 6'2", 195 and then run a 4.3, jumps out of the gym with his leaping skills. I mean, the athleticism that he brings. I know some teams, they had him on the board as a corner. When you talk about a guy with that size, that length, and that speed, they just, it's get them on our team. We'll figure it out later. So it'll be interesting, with you look at the Chargers and the safeties they have on their roster are pretty good. And so you add a guy like this to the mix. How are they going to be? How are they all going to work together? Are they going to, when they go to more nickel packages, having 3 safeties on the field? JT Woods, do they view him as a traditional safety? Do they think he's more versatile and can play more of a nickel role? Or is that going to be Derwin James? So many different things they could do here. But with an athlete like this, with a guy that has proven he can get his hands on the football, JT Woods, I do like this pick, and I do like the player.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Chris, I just kind of think about Brandon Staley and how forthcoming he was and always is, right? And he's always talking about, oh, this is our dollar. And I think you're going to see a lot of star from Derwin with JT and Nas up high. Kind of a lot of the stuff that he was doing with Jalen Ramsey with the Rams. I think he is just kind of, if he could get the right guys on this team, and you love Alohi Gilman for his leadership and his grit, but he's just not the athlete to park up there up top with Nas and keep the top on that defense. So that's kind of what I thought, just knowing, like, you just described it, how athletic he is, just the nose for the ball that Nas even had at Delaware. And we see it a little bit. He's just not finishing the plays in the NFL. He's there. He's just not finishing. But I kind of have this vision of he and JT up high, and a lot of Derwin either in the box or kind of playing that star role.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think when you watch the film at Baylor, the way that Dave Aranda would, he asked a lot of his safeties to do all these different things, whether it's, 2 safety look or playing in the box, playing near the line of scrimmage. He asked a lot of his safeties. And with JT Woods, something that, when you talk to Coach Aranda about him, he always points out how much film he watches, how smart he is. And he had Ivy League offers out of high school. So the intelligence is there, and it translates to the field. And I think you see that because of his preparation, earning a nickname like that, where he makes plays on the football, that comes from his preparation. And coming from a scheme where Dave Aranda asked his safeties to do a lot, they put a lot on his plate. And the last 2 years, he really stepped up and he answered the bell.
He had 2 picks, I believe, in the Sugar Bowl. And then Money, to your point, I look at the secondary and how it's constructed. Now you bring in JC Jackson, a guy who can get the football. We know Asante Samuel Jr. and his ball hawking skills. Nas hasn't really done it that much at the NFL level, but I feel like it's there, and it's just a matter of time. And then you bring in JT Woods, and we all know Derwin. So now Derwin could just be Derwin now. And you put those two guys high, couple that with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa up front. It looks pretty good on paper. I want to get to this running back now, Isaiah Spiller. And he feels like the ideal complement to Austin Eckler. Where was he in your evaluation process? Were you surprised he was available in the 4th round?
I had him as a borderline 3rd, 4th, could easily sneak into that top 100, but wouldn't be surprised if he was in the 4th round. I think he got beat up a little bit because his testing was not to the level of what many people thought it would be. Running the 4.6s, not running a 3-cone, things like that. His vertical was not ideally what you're looking for at the running back position. What translates, with a lot of teams translate with that lower body explosion. But this is an instinctive runner. And I think what makes Spiller so intriguing is what he does in the passing game, how good he is as a receiver, catching the ball out of the backfield. That's really where I think he's going to make his money and be the best version of himself because he can run routes. You throw on the A&M tape and you see these wheel routes, these angle routes where he's a catch and run threat. So, but from the backfield, he can work as well. I really like his vision. Just his decision-making, his timing is on point. So even though he might not, I mean, you watch his tape and you don't see a deficient athlete. So even though the testing wasn't necessarily there, you watch his tape and you like the way he's making guys miss. I mean, he's got really quick feet. So there's a lot to like about Isaiah Spiller and just the different ways he can help the offense.
Where did he fit, like in terms of and I know running backs are different, right? It depends what kind of running back you're looking for. I mean, he's different than Kyron Williams. He's different than Brian Robinson. They're different guys, but kind of where was he? Because there were quite a few guys still on the board. I was surprised all those guys ended up last until the 4th round. And there was just kind of like a bunch of them there. I think Zamir White went right before him or right after him. Just kind of where you had Spiller in terms of your overall rankings of running backs, Dane.
He was my number 3 behind only Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. So I was high on him. I did the only 2 running backs that I thought were going, those 2 guys, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, 2nd rounders. And then there was a little bit of a gap. And then I think a lot of teams saw it that way. And so they thought, you know what, we could draft, a guy here in the 3rd round, but you know what, we feel just as good about Tyler Algier or Zamir White, or it was such a deep running back class that stretched 4th round, 5th round that I think a lot of teams felt like they didn't need to take a running back in the 3rd. They could just wait. And I think that was the case here with the Chargers and Spiller, where, they could be patient and, he was there for them in the 4th round. And I think, something that you love about him playing in the SEC, he played right away. He was SEC all freshman 3 years ago. And his yards per carry, it got better every single year. Each 5.4 to 5.5 to 5.6. You love to see that, especially this past year where A&M had basically an entirely new offense with 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, brand new, quarterback, brand new. And so Spiller was kind of like the one constant from the 2020 season, and yet he had better production in 2021 than he did the year before, which you'll love to see. So productive player. Again, I think what he does as a receiver out of the backfield, that's really what he does best and what's really going to define him as a player, I think.
Hey, Money, you've talked about getting that compliment, getting maybe a little bit of a bigger back. Spiller had 16 100-yard games at Texas A&M. So I just think about this off, when you're
really durable. When you're
3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and this guy can get you first downs, that's going to work wonders for this offense. All right, let's stay in our backyard. Otito Ogbonnia goes in the 5th round from UCLA, the Bruin, the shot putter, another guy that Brandon Staley could put across this defensive line, Dane.
Yeah, and a guy that I think was a little bit late to the radar. November, December is when he started to really pick up steam in the scouting community, and you started to hear whispers. Then he gets the Senior Bowl invite, which is great for him. But he's 6'4", 325. You mentioned the track background, the pedigree that he has there. I mean, he was nationally ranked in high school, and so you love to see that coming from the Houston area. He won the titles at the state championships and the shot put and the discus. So, I think that translates to the field with some of the way that he moves. And, is he a guy that is going to give you a ton of pass rush? Probably not. I mean, you do see, a little bit of spurts, a little bit of flashes here and there. but that's not, he's not really a guy that's going to be a penetrator consistently. But you do love the traits. You do the size, almost 34.5-inch arms, really strong at the point of attack. He does have explosiveness at contact, and so he can create movement. He makes it really tough on blockers to anchor down. He can get those guys moving in reverse. And so he plays really well versus the run. And that's something that I think is going to be an important part of for him as a rookie, being part of that rotation up front in the Chargers scheme. It'll be interesting to see exactly where they line him up, if they kind of move him around or not. But not much of a pass rusher, but I think a really good run defender and someone that should be part of the rotation pretty early.
I was doing coverage for NFL Network, Dane, and so at the end of each day, who's the winner of this and who's the winner of that, and sadly, repeatedly, I felt like I kept looking at the Chiefs and going, oh man, I really like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, and how did Sky Moore last this long? When you just to kind of scout the rest of the division, just kind of your thoughts on their first four. I don't remember if Chenal was their fourth or fifth, whatever it was, but just like it seemed like, man, they got a lot of really good players early in this draft.
Yeah,
the McDuffie one stings for you.
It stings.
I thought it continued on day 3. I mean, so for the Athletic, I don't do grades, but my spin is I rank 1 through 32 my favorite draft classes. Just no analytical formula here. Just
I like these.
Yeah, from my gut. I really like what they did. And the Chiefs were number 2 for me. So
wow.
Sky Moore might have been my favorite pick of the entire draft. To get him at 54, he's not an apples to apples replacement for Tyreek Hill. They're very different players. But you think about what Sky Moore does for that underneath passing game and what he can do vertically with a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. That's just I think that has a chance to be really special pretty quickly. But yeah, then to get Leo Chenal later, and then even like on day 3, last year, Trey Smith out of Tennessee, they get him in the 6th round, and he has this great rookie season. He's a consistent starter for them. They might have done the same thing with Darian Kennard out of Kentucky. Go back to the SEC, get a guy that's falling, and then maybe Jamari Salyer will be that guy too. So a couple of those SEC guards I thought fell where maybe we thought they'd be day 2 picks. But yeah, the Chiefs, I thought they knocked it out of the park. The Raiders, they didn't have a pick in the first 2 rounds. And so obviously, that hurt them quite a bit. But to get Dylan Parham out of Memphis in round 3, I thought was outstanding value. A guy that can play guard, can play center. He brings that versatility. Reminds me a lot of Shaq Mason coming out. And okay, well, the coaching staff pretty familiar with Shaq Mason. So I thought that was a natural fit. That made a lot of sense. They pick up Zamir White. They get Neil Farrell, the more of the nose tackle out of LSU there in the 4th round. And
Butler,
then
I think, right? Then they get
Matthew Butler after that, more of the 3 technique.
He's a good player.
Complementary defensive tackles back to back there. Then even Thayer Munford out of Ohio State, tackle guard versatility. At the very least, he's going to give you some immediate depth. So like what they did, and then same thing with Denver, where they didn't necessarily have the draft picks, but I thought they maximized where they were drafting to get a Nick Bonito, who there are questions about Nick Bonito as a run defender, and you have to have a plan for him. Well, he's going to a defense where you've got Bradley Chubb on one side, Randy Gregory on the other. Jonathan Cooper out of Ohio State last year had a pretty good rookie season. You sprinkle in Nick Bonito to the mix where he's going to be a sub-package player, and you could be a little creative with how you use him. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then Greg Dulcich.
Anybody got more bend than Bonito, by the way? Does anybody bend more than that guy? It's like his body is just cranked in half when he hits that edge.
And he's just shot out of a rocket. I mean, that initial burst, I mean, he had one of the best 10-yard splits in this draft, and no surprise because that matches the tape. So his ability to force the quarterback to move his feet and to always, I got to look for his number. I know he's out there. And so Nick Bonito creates pressure, and that's what you're looking for at the position. Dulcich, getting him in the 3rd round, he was, I believe the 2nd tight end drafted, which is what we thought he'd be. Not going to be your traditional, hand on the ground, wide tight end, but as an F tight end that you could use in the slot. You could use him in line a little bit. But he's going to be a first down machine, at least have that potential. And so, you trade away Noah Fant, you bring in Greg Dulcich. I don't think that's that big of a drop off for Denver and what they did at tight end.
And what surprised you most about that first round? We talked about when the run on quarterbacks was going to happen. The run never happened.
Yep.
Malik Willis goes in the third round. Pickett was the only first round quarterback drafted. And frankly, I think that maybe affected the Chargers plan, not knowing, if there was maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks going before them, who knows what the board would have looked like.
Yeah, and it's funny when you do a mock draft, it's hard to find landing spots for those guys. And so, in my final mock, I had Kenny Pickett going 20 as my first quarterback off the board, just because it was tough to figure out. Okay, even if there are trades, who's trading up? I didn't see the Saints drafting a quarterback. Maybe the Lions could make it that kind of jump. So, I don't think it was too surprising that only 1 quarterback went in the first round. Now, the fact that 0 quarterback went in the second round, to me, that was the shocking part of this quarterback class, because we talked so much about, Malik Willis, where could he go in the first round, and maybe Sam Howell sneaks in there, or, Desmond Ridder has a chance. And so for no quarterbacks off the board besides Kenny Pickett until I think it was 74, and Desmond Ridder.
Sam Howell goes in the 5th round, right?
That's crazy. That's just
I mean, at some point, it's just like, okay, well, let's roll the dice on this player, because Sam Howell, he's got talent. And I know last season did not go as planned. I heard some of his interviews weren't all that great, but he's got a beautiful deep ball. He's got more than enough arm strength. He's a mobile player, and he's a good character guy, like good football character. So I don't know. That was surprising to see him last all the way to the 5th. And I mean, I could already hear the Sam Howell chants, with
Carson Wentz. Yeah,
Carson Wentz.
He's going to play. There's no question. Like that,
Dane,
Dane, that one's crazy. I don't know how that guy lasted. He is way too talented to be there in the 5th round.
And maybe the happiest guy was De'Ami Brown for Washington, right, who they drafted day 2 last year, and now they get to reunite. So that'll be pretty cool if Sam Howell gets on the field. But yeah, the quarterbacks. But you know what? I loved where the quarterbacks ended up. If you're the Falcons, Desmond Ridder, he's not going to stop you from drafting a quarterback next year if that's the direction you want to go. But you just want Desmond Ridder in your quarterback room. So I thought that was a great spot for him there in the 3rd round. Malik Willis going to Tennessee. He's not going to be pressing the action from day 1. You can develop him at his own pace behind Ryan Tannehill. So really like that fit. I think that made a lot of sense.
He's not going to have a mentor in Tennessee, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's okay. I mean, I don't think Brett Favre didn't mentor Aaron Rodgers, and Dak Prescott was not mentored by Tony Romo. Tony Romo had the same attitude towards it. I get it. It's just not how it works in every situation. So, but who knows how? Once these guys get to camp and start working together, and it's just that kind of stuff. It'll happen organically, maybe. But Matt Corral going to the Panthers, another one where it's such a bizarre quarterback situation right now for the Panthers as they try to figure out who's going to be the guy. Okay, well, let's roll the dice on a guy like Matt Corral here in the late 3rd round. I didn't love that they're trading future draft picks already to go up and get him. But if you're Matt Rule, tomorrow's not promised. So let's go try to get a quarterback, add him to the mix. A guy with an explosive arm, can put points on the board. Consistency, we'll figure it out. But adding Matt Corral made sense. So even though we only had 1 quarterback in the first 2 rounds, which is so rare, I mean, you never see it. I still think that it made sense where these quarterbacks ended up.
Money, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to know, just because since we're on the non-Charger part of the conversation, again, just asking you to dig into Beasts prior, and the Sam Howell thing's crazy to me. The Baker Mayfield thing is nuts to me. It's such a weird situation. 2 years ago, the guy has a solid season, beats the absolute hell out of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs, and in my opinion, he's better than half the quarterbacks in the league, and he cannot find a job. Like, your evaluation of him and what you were hearing, and why teams were just so reluctant to bring him in instead of, drafting a Matt Corral or a Desmond Ridder or something. I know they signed Marcus Mariota, but just like how that guy doesn't have a job and looks like he might not have a job.
Yeah, and it's such a layered conversation because and I mean I agree with all your points, and you also factor in that Baker was hurt this past year,
Yeah.
so he's not playing at 100%. Yeah, I mean if you're going to list the 32 best quarterbacks in the world, he's in that conversation. I mean, he's a starter, NFL starter, probably, and he's probably somewhere in that 12 to 20 range in terms of being one of the best in the world, being able to do it. Now, I think the timing of everything, it just totally screwed everything up. If that Deshaun Watson trade happens in, beginning of the offseason, before all these dominoes fell, who knows? I mean, maybe Washington, instead of the draft capital to go get Carson Wentz, maybe they use some of that draft capital to go get a Baker Mayfield. But it's just the fact that it took a while because of the legal proceedings and everything for that Deshaun Watson trade to happen. Now where we are, it's, okay, the Carolina, Seattle. I mean, there's just not many chairs left for a Baker Mayfield. And if you're the Falcons, you're not competing next year. You want a higher draft pick. So I'm not exactly looking to trade future draft capital to make my quarterback situation better right now when we're rebuilding for the long term. So where a lot of these teams are in their timelines, it just didn't match up. So unfortunately for Baker and for the Browns, they're just not going to get great value for him. And so for the Browns, they have to make a decision. Okay, are we just going to take a 5th round pick and say, all right, you know what? It is what it is. Because he's not playing for the Browns ever again. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Deshaun Watson, likely, he's facing a possible suspension. Baker Mayfield's never putting on a Browns uniform again, but is it worth hanging on to him a little bit into training camp, even though he's not going to show up for training camp, and say, maybe there'll be an injury somewhere, and then that's when we can maybe make a trade, or they just do it now. So many moving parts here. The money that's involved, and that's another part of this that I think is worth mentioning. We talk so much about that 5th-year option, why quarterbacks could go in the first round. That 5th-year option for quarterbacks,
it's an anchor.
Exactly, 100%. It's not as appealing as people think. Look at Sam Darnold. Look at Baker Mayfield. Look, the Giants not picking up that 5th-year option for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
If your quarterback is good enough, you're already talking extension by the time you get to that time to pick up a 5th-year option. So it's not really something that I think teams look at and say, well, let's take our quarterback now because of that 5th-year option in the late first round. So that's part of the conversation as well with these quarterbacks.
Dane, I know you got to roll, man. We'll get you out here on this. Just maybe quick hit thoughts on a couple of DBs that the Chargers drafted. Jasir Taylor out of Wake, Dean Leonard, Ole Miss, and then our guy.
Get the fullback in there. Get the fullback in there.
Only fullback drafted those last 3 picks. And I know you say you don't do grades, but maybe give the Chargers a subjective grade here. Objective grade.
I mean, Jasir Taylor, a guy that can help out as a return man. He loved the speed, mid 4.4s. So he's got explosiveness. He's got the aggressiveness that you want as a DB. So I think there's a lot of things that you're looking for traits at this point in the draft, right? And so speed, because cornerback, we know, stopwatch position. So you're going with speed. You're going with that aggressive mentality. I love the way he competes with wide receivers. I mean, he will not back down. And so you love that about him. Fluidity, he can turn and run. Ball skills, he finds the football, make plays. So, I think that's something that showed up a lot on Jasir Taylor's tape. And so I understand, why they, would want to roll the dice on him with Leonard. He's a guy, again, a lot of the same things that I said about Taylor, same thing with Leonard. You're a guy that good size, 6'1", 195. You want to bank on the speed, right? So 4.37, 40-yard dash. He's the type of guy that, it's bet on the speed, see what happens. Bring him to camp, bring him a part of this competition, see what he can do. And so like that addition. And then with Horvath, I mean, he's a guy that's just easy to appreciate. I mean, he was a Shrine guy. And so watching the practice tape of him at the Shrine game was really cool. Maybe not going to, there's a little bit of, okay, is he going to be a ball carrier? Is he going to be a blocker? Is he going to be a receiver? How do you exactly use him? He's a little bit of everything. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. So you see balance at contact, you see hands out of the backfield. Maybe not the most explosive guy out there, but for a guy that's, his size, 230 pounds, he moves really well. And so I think he has upside as a blocker. He has upside as a pass catcher, and he's got special teams experience. Yeah. That's key more than anything is, can you come in, can you play special teams, especially as a fullback and a guy that, is probably always going to be towards the bottom of the roster. You need to be able to play special teams and prove your worth, prove your roster spot.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought, Chris. I just thought back to how good Derek Watt was on special teams when he was here. And, what would he get? Maybe 3 to 5 snaps a game. Like that was basically his max, but he was just a beast on special teams. And I think for Tom Telesco, he's always had luck with the linebacker fullback combination on special teams. Those tend to be the better performers over his tenure that get out there. So, last year it was Neiman. Before that, it was DeZubner. Before, between those two, it was Derek Watt. So that's kind of what I saw with Horvath. But I would love to know, Dane, just quickly, just to put a button on him, because we saw Steven Anderson last year, tight end, would line up as a fullback, would block, would catch some passes out of the backfield. Does he have like that kind of movement where he could be a run the route kind of guy, like almost sort of an extra tight end? Does he have that to him or no?
When you watch him on film, I don't think you see like an explosive athlete, but I did really like his balance and his change of direction. So I do think that he has some of that to him, and he tested really well. 4.6 in the 40-yard dash is average, but you look at his 3-cone, 6.75. That's well above average for a guy that's 230 pounds. So I do think some of these angle routes, some of these quick hitters, the underneath passing game, absolutely, I think he could be an asset. So and look, he's got the background that you want as well. He's a former walk-on, worked his way to having the career that he did. Led the team in rushing last season in 2020, and then led the team in rushing touchdowns this past year. So he's got that mentality, that grinder, make it mentality that I think you want to see. And to Chris, to answer your other question about where the Chargers just rank overall. So on my article that I mentioned, that my favorite draft classes, the Chargers came in at number 11 for me. So a team that I did really like. I mean, Zion Johnson, one of my favorite players in the draft. Not having that second round pick obviously played a part in why they were 11 and not top 10, not higher. But I really liked what they did with JT Woods and then Isaiah Spiller. And I mean, Jamari Salyer, maybe the best value of the entire draft, in my opinion. So I did really like what the Chargers did.
Top third in the league. And Money, I know you like Boilermakers. The last 3 Purdue Boilermakers drafted by the Chargers: Sean Phillips, Nick Hardwick, and Drew Brees.
Worked out pretty well, huh?
3 for 3.
There you go. Go back to that well.
4 maybe. Huh?
Go back to West Lafayette.
That's right. Dane, thank you. Thank you so much, man. This was an awesome last month with you, spending some time and breaking everything down for us. We can't thank you enough. And Money, we're going to go from, this is one of my favorite pods of the year, to next week, the schedule release. We're going to break down all 17 games, baby.
Oh yeah. Boy, oh boy. I love doing that.
We'll how are they going to play
week 7 on the road? This is going to be great. Meanwhile,
all right, guys.
Meanwhile, I want to plant this seed real quick, because it's just me. It's a humble brag, even though I'm going to show my ignorance. I don't know their names, but I know their numbers, Dane. 15, 31, and 88, I believe, are the numbers of the 3 dudes that get me excited about the draft next year. All defensive players, all in the SEC. 2 Alabama, 1 Georgia. Georgia's 88, Alabama's 15 and 31, right?
Yeah, Jalen Carter, the defensive, he might be the best defensive lineman that Georgia produces, and that's saying something considering Georgia just had 3 first-round defensive linemen, and I mean Will Anderson, he would have been
incredible.
Would have been the number 1 overall pick this year if you were allowed to declare as a true sophomore. But he's rare. He is very, very different. He is in that Myles Garrett, Chase Young conversation as, Joey Bosa. I mean, elite type of edge rusher, no doubt. So definitely a guy to watch for next year.
There we go.
And then the quarterbacks, about 5 quarterbacks off the board the first round?
It'll be interesting. I mean, next year's quarterback class is always better, right? So, right. But I think this year will certainly prove true. It's going to be the CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to have that conversation in the next 11 months, and not just draft time, but Heisman conversation, and Alabama and Ohio State, vying for playoff contention and all that. So I'm a big believer in CJ Stroud with what I saw last year, the improvements he made throughout the year. He's just, for a young player, the anticipation he showed was outstanding. They had a lot of talent around him, and still will. Columbus, they just kind of restocked that wide receiver room. It's pretty remarkable. And then Bryce Young, a little undersized, but he's got the 2 P's, poise and processing. Really, really impressive. So we'll be talking more about those guys here soon enough.
Yeah. Not giving up on my man DJ either. I'm not giving up on my man DJ Uiagalelei. I know it just got sideways on him at Clemson. He's the best high school quarterback I've ever watched in my life. I refuse to believe that it's over for him. I am holding out, great young man too. I'm holding out hope that he can get that worked out, because you talk about measurables. My goodness, the man's an absolute, and a former, would have been a first-round pick as a center fielder playing baseball. So that type of athleticism. So let's hold out hope, plant some positive seeds for the local kid to figure it out this year.
A lot of it's just mechanical with him. Just needs to be more consistent. Put it up. Yeah, you're absolutely right though. The tools, the traits, off the charts.
Yeah.
2023.
We're already talking about it.
We're already here, baby. Dane, thank you so much. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We'll see you next week for the schedule release.